let's do something interesting today. Today, we're going to talk about 4 essential things. Count them. 4 things you can do to a small greenhouse that'll make it grow better in the spring, warmer in the fall, and potentially even get you through the winter, depending upon where you live. Because the reason people buy a small greenhouse, and when I say a small greenhouse, I'm talking 200 to about 1,000 square feet. Something you can put in your backyard. Something that most people can buy as a hobby or a second business or a part-time business, or something that they can play with so that they can go off-grid maybe, or have backup food or better food. Because my purpose has always been to get better food, tastier food, more nutritious food. Well, mostly it's taste. I'm a fat guy. What do fat guys want? They want tasty food. So this video is going to be about 4 things you can do to a simple greenhouse, a simple hoop house, that will make it grow better in the spring, be warmer in the spring, be cooler in the summer, and stay warmer later into the fall and potentially into the winter. Simple Tech. That's the name of this channel. We have piles of videos on greenhouses and growing in our archives that you should check out after you watch this one. The way to do that, hit the subscribe button. The nice thing about that subscribe button is if you actually hit the bell beside it, you don't just get to check out our archives, you also get notified upon when we post new videos. So hit the subscribe button, slam that bell, and hit like if this is something that appeals to you. The beautiful thing about like is that if you hit like, YouTube is going to serve up on the right-hand side suggested videos similar to this one. So you get to learn more about the same topic, not just from me, but from other creators as well. When we talk small greenhouses, I've been touting the idea of a double inflated poly greenhouse for years. Sure, you can use polycarbonate and double layer and triple layer polycarbonate, and it's better. Well, somewhat better. But it's way more expensive, and we're talking in the range of 6 to 10 times. 6 to 10 times is a lot of money. Do you really need to spend that much money? I mean, the double inflated poly greenhouses are going to give you an R2 or better. That's actually fantastic. That's a really good insulation level for a transparent material, because double pane, triple pane glass doesn't get much better than that. And the reason the double air inflated poly gets that is that it's not a thin little layer like the double layer glass or like the double layer polycarbonate. It's a foot or more. That's a lot of space to transmit heat or cold through, so it gives you a better R rating. It's not that expensive. The only things you really need to transform a regular hoop house to a double inflated poly hoop house is an extra layer of poly, an air blower, and some boards that you can secure the poly to the bottom of the greenhouse so that you can actually blow air into it. This is not complicated. This is simple stuff, and it works incredibly well. And I can testify to that because my greenhouse has stood up to 120 kilometer-hour winds, and it just bounces off. It's actually amazing how unbelievably well double inflated poly works, and it's affordable. So number 1 essential upgrade you need to do to your greenhouse is double layer poly with an air blower. The second essential upgrade that you need to look at with a hoop house type structure for a greenhouse when you've got double layer poly is to insulate the north wall. If you insulate the north wall and you orient your greenhouse east to west, the sun will travel and start in the east and set in the west and go right across your greenhouse, but there is no sunlight on that north wall. So although an R2 from double inflated poly is good, it's nowhere near as good as you can get by adding 4 inches of styrofoam insulation underneath the double layer poly. And that's the easy, cheap way to do it, is you build a hoop house and you have a double layer poly all the way around. But you go and insulate the north wall by sticking 4 inches of styrofoam insulation behind the hoop house structural beams, the steel beam or steel hoops, and in front of the poly. Well, this is going to give you somewhere between an R10 and an R20 plus the R2. So you're looking at a really good insulation factor on that north wall. Anything you can retain on that north wall for insulation is heat that you don't lose. Now, if you want to have some heat retention, you can always put in water barrels that are painted black along the north wall as well. These work. Water is one of the best materials out there for holding and transferring heat. But the number one thing you need to look at before anything else is actually insulating that north wall so you don't lose any heat. And that's massive. Not many people in North America are doing this. The Chinese caught on to this years ago with a Chinese passive solar greenhouse design, and now there's hundreds of thousands of these greenhouses right across China. And a lot of the food that we eat today is grown in a greenhouse that has an insulated north wall. And the step up from that is not just insulated, but some sort of a thermal mass that can collect the heat and give it back at night so that you can get deeper into the winter and grow food. Now, with a hoop house, there's another insulation trick. And this one, although it's used a lot in China, is rarely used in North America, and it should be. If you want to keep your plants warm, an R2 is great during the day when the sun is shining and it's heating up the greenhouse. But the second that sun is gone, you don't have that heat source anymore. So you want to keep what heat is in your greenhouse for as long as possible. The north wall works, but the next step in insulation is a roll-up blanket. Now, there's all kinds of different roll-up blankets, and there's ways to do them on the inside or outside. But if you implement a roll-up blanket that you can roll down when the sun goes down and roll up when the sun comes up, and whether you're going to do it manually or whether you're going to do it on some sort of automated system where you've got some sort of motor that lowers and raises this blanket, either way, a blanket can add another R2 to R5 or even R6 on top of the double insulated poly. So that takes you to a total of an R5 to an R8. This isn't as good as your north wall, but it's 2 and 3 times better than any transparent material can possibly give you. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to keep your plants warm longer. You're going to get longer into the fall. You're going to start earlier in the spring because the sun's going to heat up that greenhouse, especially if you have a thermal mass of some sort in it, and it's going to radiate that heat out and keep your plants from freezing. Now, in the spring, your big number one thing is you just really don't want to freeze. The plants need to get a good start, and in the fall, you want to harvest them as long as possible to get as much produce as humanly possible. And a roll-up blanket is going to put you one step ahead of all your competitors to give you an earlier start and a later finish. And this is on greenhouses where you aren't even putting active heating into. This is just something that sits in your backyard and has nothing put into it. Now, the fourth thing of the 4 essential greenhouse upgrades we're going to look at today is vents and fans. Now, personally, I don't think vents are enough. Even if you've got a sawtooth type greenhouse that has fence on the roof to get some sort of convection moving with air through it, fans do not use a lot of electricity. You can power a fan easily off of a solar panel or 1 or 2 solar panels, or you can run them just with an extension cord from your house. They don't need a lot of power, but they move a lot of wind. Fans are essential for cooling down your greenhouse. Now, they're not going to get your greenhouse any colder than the ambient air temperature. So if you're in a place that gets 45 degrees Celsius, you're screwed. I'm sorry, you're going to need the air conditioning of some sort. And I have other videos that address that for different areas depending upon humidity and ground temperature and that kind of stuff. But if you live in an area like I do in Canada, we're in Manitoba, vents and fans, we don't get much over 35 degrees Celsius. We rarely get over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, I've had a lot of people ask me for talking Fahrenheit, so I can mention it once in a while. If that's your maximum temperature and you've got good fans on some of your vents where you can move the ambient air through, and sometimes it's better to take the air from the ground, but it doesn't really matter. You just need to move a lot of air through your greenhouse or it's going to cook. Now, If it starts to get away from you, there are some emergency measures you can take. I have videos on how to cool a greenhouse quickly with misting and other things like that. But fans and vents are essential and don't come with basic greenhouse kits, but you need them. You can go to Home Depot and get a good box fan for 35 bucks. You add 2 or 3 of those and you're pushing a lot of air. I mean, a serious amount of air through your greenhouse, and that's going to cool your greenhouse to the ambient air temperatures. So that's it. 4 essential greenhouse upgrades you can do on a small, cheap greenhouse, 200 square feet to 1,000 square feet, or even bigger, to be honest, that will get you starting earlier in the spring and harvesting and continuing to harvest later in the fall. I hope you like this video. Hope to see you in the next one.